Darren is going to talk about this change that we made to our access model and some of the modeling that went into that. The reason for bringing Darren along is because he is one of our stakeholders. He's somebody that we're dealing with, but he can sort of see both sides of the work that we're doing. So he obviously can see the analytical inputs, but he's also working with business stakeholders, thinking about the strategy for how all of this stuff ultimately rolls up into what we do as a company. So Darren is a very special kind of accountant because he's so sort of knitted into both sides of the equation. And I think that he has some interesting things to tell us about. And once he's finished, there'll be time for Q&A. We'll cut up. So almost over to Darren, because the other thing I was going to say is that today I've learned two things about Darren I didn't know. The first thing was from his bio, which is that he used to be a door-to-door salesperson. And the second thing is that he has the world's largest laptop. There you go. Over to you, Darren.
Hello, everyone. I know you've all just eaten. Would you mind standing up very quickly for me? Stretch those legs, get very comfortable. Now, please sit down if you don't ever work with finance. Don't work with finance? Take a seat. Most of you work with finance. This is fantastic. Hopefully, you before. Please take a seat. It's good to see who works with finance. Let me get almost there. Please keep talking as. So, welcome. I'm Darren Joffe. I'm the Senior Finance Manager for B2C. It is the subscription arm of the Financial Times. And I'm here to talk to you about my experience with data and how we use it within the finance department, and particularly how we've used it to drive a commercial outcome, change our access model. It's a big strategic shift for the financial. And as Tom mentioned, we'll sit down at the end and take any questions that you might have. But of course, as ever, feel free to jump in if anything comes to you. So right, some of the more boring stuff that accountants do, and this will be familiar to finance people or accountants within the Bonnier Group. We account for all the receipts, all the money that comes in. We also account for all of the payments that go out. These are the basic workings of cash flow. We, of course, need to make sure that our records are correct. And of course, crucially, that we're paying tax and people and our suppliers. We also prepare statements of financial performance, so a P&L or a balance sheet. These are prepared in a consistent way so that we can look back to prior years or periods and determine, measure against those periods. And of course, we love supersized calculators. Just very briefly. That is the biggest calculator you will find. It does a few other things too. Now, I just wanted to talk very quickly about the way that I see my team. We're navigators, and we support the FT's leaders with information and analysis about performance, as well as the FT's position financially. So these are the basic mechanics of management reporting. We produce a lot of it. We also get involved in the forecasting process. So we map out exactly financially where the business is headed based on all of the different levers. We also contribute to strategic decision making. Sometimes we get involved in decisions around investments or even divestments. We're selling off one of our businesses. As Robin mentioned earlier, we're also independent, bring a level of professional objectivity. As an accountant, I belong to a professional body and I'm bound by a code of ethics. And this means we are well positioned to challenge the business Sometimes it means making unpopular decisions like cost cutting. Then not everyone is friends with us, but it's always in the best interest of the organization. But there's a little bit more to it. My team and I, we are commercial finance, so we're focused on understanding the core of what the business does. Similar to data, you can't talk to the business if you're not understanding what they are trying to achieve and what the key drivers are. So with this, we start to build up a partnership with the business. In fact, we sit with them. You just heard from Rachel and Robin a moment ago, and their desks are just a few desks away from my own. Tom's office is just around the corner. So we are closely knit together, and this brings about a real degree of collaboration and teamwork. And it makes a big difference if you have a question, and instead of posting it onto one of Robin's Google Docs, you can go over to his desk and nag him and try and get an answer instantaneously. So sitting with him, we build an understanding, we build an element of credibility and trust. Ultimately, the way I see it is we become an internal finance consulting unit. We use our understanding to partner with the business, ask them loads and loads of questions to try and get their creative juices flowing, and use all of that information to map out future to our forecasting process. Of course, with forecasting comes targets. So we want buy-in from the business when we're setting their targets, because they will ultimately be responsible for meeting those. And to do all of these things, we need lots and lots of data. One of the key things that we are interested in as a finance team is understanding return on investment. We invest, we want to make sure that we get a positive return for money back. Robin spoke earlier about the marketing paid media, and what finance and analytics have been a driving force behind understanding the efficiency of our paid media spend. The key way of looking at this is, what do we get for the first £1 million that we spend versus what we get for the second £1 million? Because of the marginal cost of acquisitions, I think it's understandable that you won't get the same sort of return for the first $1 million as you will for the second spend. These are the things that we want to understand, make sure we're getting value. Currently part of a working group with the analytics team, and we're building up our tools and capabilities to be able to do this in a much more grand way and engage with the business further. So we invest money, get acquisitions or volume. What about financial return? This has been spoken about also. Customer lifetime value. We want to understand when you invest, get your volume, what money is going to come in. So ultimately, how much money will we earn from a subscriber over their life with us? We obviously hope to engage them and keep them around for as long as possible, but that's not always going to be the case. Sometimes they will leave us. The LTV metric crucially accounts for things like churn, and it uses a whole load of very clever data science to understand where a subscriber came from, what product they went onto, how much they're using content, visiting the site, and then determining a financial value that gives us finance or the business an indication of how much. When you line these things all up, you can see that they're interconnected. I mentioned this earlier. We also produce a lot of management reporting. You don't want to just report for the sake of it. These three charts over here represent our acquisition, your cohorts, and weekly net growth pipeline. Don't worry too much about the detail. They're deliberately small, but I'll talk through them very, very quickly. On the first chart, by week, you can see the level of acquisitions that we're bringing in. This is the top part of our funnel, or the new business. We see acquisitions coming in from trial, and they convert, which is the orange part. And we also bring in people who want to take a subscription directly. Differentiate between that over there. On the middle chart, you can see our subs coming up for renewal. Now, we break it out between monthly and annual. And of course, when a subscriber comes to the end of their subscription, they have the opportunity to cancel. We need to know about that. But we follow that quite closely to understand the relationship between the volume up for renewal and the cancellation rate that we might see off the back of it. When you wrap those two things together, you'll then get your weekly net growth. Hopefully it's growth, which is mostly growth, and sometimes there's contraction. Now we get to the really cool bit. This isn't only a tool which talks about the past. Of course, we want to understand history, what happened, to justify key movements. It also tells us about the present. What are we seeing right now? Crucially, it talks about the future. So it is very much a predictive tool. We understand our trialist pipeline, or how many trials we've acquired 4 weeks ago. We understand the conversion rates and efficiency. With that, we then project how many trial conversions we think we'll see over the coming 4 weeks. So that's a big positive. We also understand 4 weeks into the future how many subscribers are going to renew, and we hope to engage them and reduce the level of cancellation. That again gives us the minus into the future. And when you wrap those two things together, we can look 4 weeks into the future with a greater degree of accuracy and determine how many subscribers might leave us, come in, and what is the net impact of that. This is very, very useful, and the business, and particularly senior leaders, draw a lot of valuable insight from this, and it helps them determine whether they need to take a particular course of action. If things aren't looking so rosy, or if things are looking really good, what's happening, and what can we do to repeat that? Now that was an example of the operational stuff that we do down on the ground. Now let's take this right up to the top. I'm not sure how many of you know this, but Nikkei bought the Financial Times in 2015. And over here you can see a statement from Tsuneo Kita. He is the chairman and group CEO of Nikkei. He is the highest ranking official, and this represents his corporate ambition for the Financial Times. He wants the FT to be extremely profitable. And of course, we want to achieve this through investment. That investment needs to drive more customers and exciting new products. This is very much a customer-focused ambition for the Financial Times. Now, of course, with that sort of ambition, it puts a lot of pressure on FT's board of directors. And of course, in turn, the people who work there to achieve these goals, strategic objective. No, we love a pyramid at the Financial Times. And I'm sure you're all aware that we are working very, very hard to generate 1 million paid-for subscribers. We're currently at around about 877,000. Now, if you think of it this way, if we were extremely awesome at engaging our users, and we had a 0% churn rate, and we held on to all 877,000 subscribers, we still wouldn't be at 1 million. We would need to do a little bit more. We would have to acquire new subs. We need to open up our funnel to get out into the market, get people sampling FT content, getting them to build habits, and bringing them on board. I'm going to bend my presentation a little towards B2C, because that is the area that I look after. So within that 1 million, B2C are responsible for their own components of it. They're working very, very hard to achieve their targets. Now, this is a chart which will hopefully help depict the mechanics or the fundamentals of the B2C subscription business. We start at the beginning of a week with a base. We want that base to get bigger. We then, through direct acquisition or trial, add more subscribers. People come on board. That is a plus. It makes our base bigger. Of course, in line with the subs coming up for renewal, some may choose to leave us and cancel. Of course, want to engage them and hope that doesn't happen. Some do. That makes our base contract slightly, get smaller. Rachel spoke about this at length. You see, some subs leave us through the payment failure process. That again makes our base get a little bit smaller. We might get those subs back, in which case they will come through in that same number. That is the net of the loss and the return. Now, it's important to pause and note that we have a marketing department. Within that marketing department, you have teams. We have teams specifically focused on looking at each one of these things. We have an acquisition team. We have a retention team. We're focused on engaging our users. And we have a payment optimization team. We want to make sure that we lose as few subs as possible through payment failure. When you wrap all of those things up, you get net growth. With that, your base starts to get bigger, and that's exactly what we need to get closer to our ambition of 1 million paid subscribers. Now, just holding on to the thoughts of cancellations. We don't want to lose subs. So we work very, very hard to try and minimize these. We've heard about engagement. Read engagement tells us when a subscriber last visited our site, how often they come back, how many of our stories they read. It is key to improving retention. Finance, another collaboration, Finance Ask Data, build a LTV model and determine the link between engagement and LTV. And in the chart over there, a beautiful chart, I think it's plain to see that there is a positive correlation between engagement and lifetime value. And particularly your LTV moves up as you move through your product tiers. So with a standard monthly, you'll get less money than we will from a premium annual. Premium is more expensive. And as you improve your engagement, people will tend to stick around with us for longer. So this really, really proves that engagement works. Beautiful connection. This is powerful stuff. Let's engage our audience. Let's generate more volume, get closer to 1 million subscribers, and we make lots of money. Fantastic. We wouldn't want that. Not always so easy. Now I get onto the case study. So there was some research with our customers, and we came up with some interesting hypotheses. If you take a look at this chart over here, which I've hand drawn on, this demonstrates our FT subscriber base, or B2C specifically. And you can see from the 2010 to early 2012 period, we experienced some really, really phenomenal growth. We're accelerating our technology. We were launching things like HTML5 web app, and we saw growth over 2 years averaging 38%. That is phenomenal stuff. But as you can see, from 2012 onwards, things weren't quite so positive. Our base plateaued. In fact, in some weeks, we had contraction. It went backwards. That was a period of time when we went through a lot of introspection. We figured out our plans, and we decided to optimize our access model, not change it, try and work harder to get more out of it. We also joined up with a new marketing agency. We spent more marketing. With that, we managed to restore growth without making any phenomenal change. That got us about 8% growth over the 2013-2014 period. But we wanted 1 million, and that just wasn't going to cut it. So what did we do next? We needed something more. So just to give you a little bit of context, the board have their pressures, they wanted strategy, and they needed a strategic change. Sure, we were able to get growth back again, but it wasn't, as I said, enough. They decided on a strategic outcome, something that we can focus our strategy on. That is to create a more effective sampling mechanism to drive conversion. I said this earlier, we wanted as many people as possible to come to FD, try our content, build up a habit, and of course pay for it. So this is where the challenge came in. They pushed this on the business, and the business needed to solve that strategic outcome. How were we going to get there? Well, who went first? We spoke about research earlier. We're fortunate to have a research team. They laid down the initial foundations. They talked to our customers, and they learned some interesting things. Questioning our customers and putting surveys in front of them yielded what you can see on the board here, that we were leaving too much on the table. Within our registered user base, or within our anonymous pool, people who are accessing content that were neither registered nor subscribed, they demonstrated that they would be willing to pay for a range of products, yet we weren't charging them for this. So there's very, very much an opportunity here. Of course, when you have a hypothesis based on small groups of people answering questions about their product portfolio, you then need to test. And in order to address the sampling objective, we set up 3 discrete tests. We put out a light package where you can access a limited number of articles and a slightly reduced offering. Or to put it another way, there was restricted access to a degree. Second to that, we decided to replace new registered users with a free trial. So they would have access to all of FT's online content for a period of 4 weeks. We would hope to build some engagement and habit within that period, of course. And finally, there was a paid trial. So the same access, but take £1 or $1 or €1. Now, there were lots and lots of minds working on this. I've clearly ignored Robin's advice earlier around slide and aesthetics. I have research sitting there in the corner. But I guess you will kind of see the point. We've spoken about research. We then had the marketing and product teams. They were responsible for setting up the tests, building out the solution. Analytics and finance, of course, were there to sense check things and model outcomes and understand, well, from an analytics perspective, amount of traffic coming to the site and understanding the customer behavior. On the finance side, we were particularly interested in the volume of trials. We were also interested in the number of people taking a light package. And ultimately, we were interested in conversion from trial to a paid subscription. What did that conversion rate look like? Crucially, how did it look over time? Now, in order to do this, no team is an island. We needed to work as one. We formed virtual teams. Robin alluded to this earlier. Had catch-ups. We reviewed results constantly. We were always talking. Proximity made this much, much easier. We're all scattered on the same floor. Some of us on the fourth floor, just one above. We also visited one another's team meetings. But we were able to drive this testing and genuinely understand the results that are coming up off the back of it. Then you get to the fun stuff from a finance perspective. And I've alluded to this already. We needed to model out the financial impact. We'd acquire trials or people coming onto a live package. We don't want to understand the traffic driving, the volumes, and the number of acquisitions that we're taking at flight. Of course, once you've got all of these trials and subscribers on the live package, we want to see conversion or ultimately a longer tail retention. This required a lot of patience, particularly with the trials. They would convert, but we'd want to understand 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 13 weeks later, how many of them were still sticking around and paying for the content. And we want to compare that to an ordinary subscriber coming on, not via a trial. And then finally, we really want to understand the financial. How much money are we getting? I mentioned ARPU earlier. There are a number of flaws with it, but it is one of the metrics that we use. Of course, LTV wraps into this too. To explain quite simply how we would model this out, if you think about bringing a trial on board, they either don't pay you anything or they pay £1. There's a financial implication for the £1. We've got that. Cool. That's money. Tick. 4 weeks later, do they convert? Fairly binary. Yes, they do. We get the money from them for the full paying subscription. We then account for that money. If they don't, then there's no money. If they continue to stick around, we will continue to model out having money for them. If they leave us or churn, we will stop accounting for them. It's explaining it very, very basically, but we will always track what a subscriber does and associate money with them if they stick with us. We will kind of model that out without going into too much detail. One thing we learned from the trials in particular is that it wasn't all upside. So what you can see here on the orange line is a typical monthly subscriber and how they churn over time. On the blue line, you can see churn rate of a trialist. We clearly don't end up with as many trials at the end of a 1 year period as we would put in ourselves. So there was an element of decay. But despite this, because we were opening up our top end of the funnel to people taking a trial for free or £1, they would then have the opportunity to sample. So we were bringing in more people at the top end of the funnel. But despite that, we would still end up with more volume having the trials than we would without having them. So with all of this testing and all of this learning that went on for months, where did we get to? So we tested against 3 things. On the live package, we failed at the first hurdle. We learned that there was cannibalization going on. We weren't ending up with any more volume than we otherwise would. Therefore, in fact, people going onto a light package end up paying less than they would for a full price package. So we were losing out on ARPU as well. We didn't really worry too much about the conversion. Fell on 2 accounts and you're out. Then on the free trial, we got the volume. Who wouldn't want to subscribe it or take a free trial and access as much content as they could for 4 weeks? That one was a tick. On the price, if they converted, they would move on to a premium monthly subscription. Annualized, that works out to be our most expensive subscription. So we were getting our price. Things were good. But on the conversion, that wasn't so good. We needed to introduce a second customer interaction. With that interaction, we would ask them to give us their payment details. And that's not a very good customer journey. But on the paid trial, we would get the volume, similar to the free trial. they were moving onto a monthly premium, so we got the price. And then one on conversion, because we already had their credit card details, and we would auto enroll them onto a full paid subscription. And in brief, that is how we came to the conclusion that the way to change our access model was to remove registration and to open up trials to whoever wanted to sample NFT content, charge them a pound, and manage the conversion, the engagement, and all of those things as part of the ongoing process. Oh, and by the way, don't want to forget, we ended up after the testing with 15% more volume on the trials than we did on the old model registration. So, coming back to our chart, we demonstrated how we achieved 8% growth. What did we get with this change? We launched trials, and we got 12% growth. We were back to double digits. We did that consistently for about 2 years. Now we get to the next fundamental question. We've been running with that model for about 2 years. What do we do next? I deliberately end on a question because we don't necessarily have a magic bullet or a single answer. One thing's for sure, there are a lot of moving parts in the industry. It is very, very disruptive. Look at things like GDPR. It is throwing businesses into disarray. These things need to be managed collaboratively and collectively, bringing everybody together to think about the implications. This is my own genuine belief. We need team working and collaboration. The way I see it is, culture eats a strategy for breakfast. Incredible strategy. And it's poised to deliver some step change growth or change of fortunes. If you don't have your people buying into it, you don't have people working collaboratively, collectively, as a team, your strategy ain't going to work. And John Ridding, who is the CEO of the Financial Times, said it quite well, I think. At the FT, we're moving from business as usual to disruption as usual. Oh, that was the slide graveyard. many slides died in the making of this presentation. That should say questions.
You want to see what's in the graveyard? What all the good stuff.
Next presentation.
Thank you, John. Questions? Okay, I was going to ask questions, but there are questions here. So go ahead.
What happened with traffic and advertising when you switched from the previous model to the new one, and which holes you kept open so it didn't affect much?
I can see Robin's getting really, really excited back to answer this question.
You want to answer it?
Okay.
So it was a good question. So we had a lot of little phone cases. So if you look at the FT and our traffic, they massively disproportionate amount of traffic from subscribers. So a relatively small amount of pages actually get from anonymous users. Because an anonymous user comes in, it's one of the ones causing them amounts of and then subscribers come very quickly being blocked. So what we found was sort of a decrease in anonymous stayed the same, which is a decrease in our registered users, offset by this. They read page files. That was
Share.
I can't off the top of my head in terms of the split. Yeah, approximately, I would say. So if you look at our visitors to our website, about 90% of them are anonymous. This is now, whereas page views, I think it's about 70%. Yeah. There you go. So, but that was absolutely, obviously, we came with this question, we had an advertising, so no subscribers.
Isn't the problem with the next page view from the same user of the subscriber is worth as less? So
in the base, especially if they are top job brands?
We find that I think for us, what's valuable is a page describing when you know who they are. So we know their CEO and they work from home. So that's what the whole was from CEO perspective. So that's
Yeah, we make significantly higher yield on no users, target of the subscription demographic data. I was going to make one other point about not this change, but the previous change that we made to our access model when we decided to make registration compulsory. So even when we were still operating under a metered model, once upon a time you could get access to FT journalism for free, and you got, I remember, between 3 and 5 articles a month without having to even register. And we took that away and said you have to register. You still get some free articles a month. It gives you details. And that, I think that was a much more controversial decision to take from an advertising perspective, because people felt that it would make a very material difference to the advertising inventory. But we forecast out what we thought the impact was going to be. And I think we said it would be somewhere between 7 and 21% impact on page views, which even at the 21% level would have had a relatively small impact on our advertising business because our sell-through rates aren't 100%. And in reality, what happened was we lost about 14% of our traffic. So it was like bang in the middle of the forecast, our best and worst case, but that lasted a month. And then after a month, everyone had registered, and so the traffic came back again. So there's literally like a 1-month blip, and then the growth trajectory continued. In this model, we did intentionally also introduce some leaks. So if you click through from social media, you can get through to 1 article per day currently, one from Facebook, one from Twitter, one from LinkedIn, etc. And that was an intentional route to make sure that we weren't just completely cutting off anonymous users and their ability to sign.
When you're kind of trying to strategize and to see what you want to do next to hire more users specifically, and when you have the lifetime value, when the changes are happening so fast, how do you kind of assess the lifetime value down the road? How far are you willing to kind of try to think that you can estimate? Or
Yeah, so I think what you're saying is LTV is a function of things that we've seen in the past. But when you're using the past to project the future, things might change. To answer that question, we have the analytics team constantly finding the LTV model. Of course, you're always going to have to make, as best you can, an educated guess about how churn might change or retention rates might change in the future. Of course, you can then factor those things in. But it's always going to be, I think, a function of what you've seen in the past, plus a logical, educated guess of what the future is going to be. Then you can then apply a discount factor if you're feeling like there's a lot of risk. You can downgrade your LTV back.
I noticed in when you forecast, you could see that you forecasting based on churn, based on acquisition, like the back.
Yeah,
that's straightforward enough. But then the bottom,
on the base.
Yeah, the base was flat. Like, is that just budgeted, or is it like weather, or because they were all the same before?
In reality and in our modeling, we definitely forecast churn on the new acquisitions, but also on the base.
No, not the churn. The acquisition you had.
Shall I go back?
Yeah, that's probably easy. I think you. Oh, sorry.
Looks interesting in reverse, doesn't it?
Test to see.
It makes more sense to me, actually. It's all starting to become clear. You're talking about that one?
No.
Earlier.
Just on the weekly report.
The weekly
Well, that one, the red one's there, is flat. So is that like based on
Right. So those acquisitions, yes. So what we decided to do in that particular report is it was either taking an average of 6 to 8 weeks before and then projecting based on that average. The other alternative is to use what we have in the forecast. Sometimes we don't believe the forecast is the most true reflection of what's going to happen. We only do that 3 times a year. So in this instance, we will replace forecast with our most recent projection. You see what I mean? Okay. So yes, it looks like it is flat, but that's probably deliberately so because of the average from the 6 weeks just before.
Our acquisition will need to be consistent.
Oh, really?
I mean, there's seasonal when we campaigns, and then there's a post-Christmas kind of spike, and then some dip, but other than that, we're consistent.
Towards a goal of reaching 1 million, of course, it changed the product a lot, making new offers and so on. But I guess there must be some kind of natural plateau, at least with the product you have today, where now it gets harder and harder and harder to acquire every new customer. How do you deal with that strategically?
So within the FT, we're constantly thinking about this. At the moment, we're thinking very deeply about what our product should look like, and how we can best articulate what people are getting from each product and kind of matching the right product to the right person. These things take a little bit of time and a massive amount of energy and collaboration. We're very much in the process of thinking about that, trying to deliver on it.
I think to add to what Darren's saying, I think you see general sort of cycles in the growth of a subscription business. So for us, the metered model was really good for getting started. I think it's a really nice model to learn about the content because you can sort of pull one lever and get some more advertising inventory if you need it, and then you can kind of pare back if you don't need the advertising inventory. And so you've got the flexibility to maximize both subscription revenue and advertising revenue. But what we saw and what what we believe the genesis of that first plateau in our subscription business was about was related to just the lack of momentum that you get in the long run, because what you end up with is a rump of users who have enough. You're giving them enough for free. That they come back month after month after month, and they just will not buy. And so, and crucially, you know, A, they feel like they've got enough, and B, the sampling was in fact having the reverse effect of what we wanted, because the effect that we wanted is for people to build that habit and build loyalty with the journalism, whereas actually when we went and did research and looked at how they use the site generally, we saw that they were rationing their usage. So they kind of go, I'm not going to click on that one because I've only got 8 articles this month, and I'm not going to read that one, and I'm not going to read that one, which is completely counterintuitive. That was one of the hunches that sort of led into the trials model. So, you know, for us, we felt like the metered model ran out of steam. I know many other publishers have felt the same and switched into sort of freemium-esque models. But I think ultimately, probably every model to some extent reaches some kind of a limit, and you have to keep changing. So the point is, you actually, I don't think you can stand still and just say, this is it now, you know, we're going to do this. Even for like the next 3 years, you know, we're constantly evolving and tweaking to try and make it work as effectively as possible.
I got an additional question to that. Is that do you work with analyzing the behavior of your users to kind of identify possible products or different ways of presenting?
So, yes. So I'd say rather than what we tried to do, rather than launch separate standalone products, which we have done in the past, but not with very much success, is instead looking at how we reinforce the existing proposition. So today we sell a standard subscription and a premium subscription. Our strategy for the last 2 years has been very focused on how can we bolster the value of premium, because that's where a significant chunk of the revenue comes from. And so we've been investing very explicitly in doing that, looking at but in our data to say, well, actually, what is it that people use who seem to get more value from their subscription, who have a higher willingness to pay? So blending the sort of stuff we talked about yesterday with all of the personas, blending that with the data to try and figure out behaviorally what are those people doing, and then carving that out as a separate premium product. In most cases, creating it as a new area of investment rather than taking something away from a standard subscription that gets premium. So that's not very popular. And standard subscribers still feel like they pay a premium price because we're significantly more expensive than competition. More questions for Darren? Oh, I have a question. You talked about reporting driving action. I'm curious if you've got some specific examples of that.
Going back before we built up our internal reporting capability, now we use OLAP cubes and self-serve technology to get information out really, really quickly, near real time. A simple example would be the inability for us to look at our acquisitions. Seems straightforward and should be able to do this, to look at our acquisitions by day. So we couldn't see how many we're getting on a Monday versus a Thursday, for instance. It was always aggregated at a week level. Once we tapped into our genuine reporting capability and we rolled that functionality out, we noticed quite immediately that you had a real tail off at the end of the week. So on the Saturday and Sunday, there was a significant drop in the number of acquisitions that we used to drive. And with this was a challenge from our then managing director of FT.com, saying, hey, what the hell's going on here? Why is there such a massive drop? And what can we do to drive more acquisitions? This led to conversations and ultimately a new marketing campaign, specifically at the weekend. And I believe the tagline was something along the lines of, come in on Monday informed, or start your week informed. So we were marketing this specifically at the weekend and offering a deep level of discounting. And our new reporting showed that acquisitions, in fact, began to uptick at the weekend. So that, I think, is a very good example of us using insight, very simplistically, to drive a commercial goal or outcome. We didn't completely eliminate the decline at the weekend, but we certainly reduced its impact.
And your team are looking after the money,
Yes.
but you also look quite a lot at non-financial KPIs, non-financial metrics, on the basis that they ultimately support the revenue. How do you think that those KPIs bring some sort of forward visibility in terms of business performance and where we're going?
So when we're talking about non-financial KPIs, I think good examples would be March Dominion itself. That is non-financial in nature. It resonates with the business. It means something to them. Equally, engagement is too. So when we're talking about the future, we will sit as a finance team with the business to understand what their forward plans are. And if we can understand what they're planning to do, in order for it to make sense to them, we can tie that to non-financial KPIs. So for instance, they know that they might be launching an initiative that is particularly going to impact engagement. Once we have an understanding of what that impact is, we can tie that back to a financial number and then forecast that within our P&L. So it's always talking to the business, understanding what they're planning to do in their own non-financial way and tying that back to the financial targets. It is all completely linked. And I don't think you can sit with the business and say, right, tell me how much money you're going to make 1 year from now. It seems a bit pointless.
Yeah, I think the common thread there with something that you talked about as a kind of theme throughout your presentation and resonates in the case study as well is thinking about how you make decisions in uncertain environments. And especially when you've got something like launching a new access model, BFT is a really big decision because BFT pioneered and invented the metered model. For us to stand up and say publicly, hey, you know what, we're not doing the metered model anymore, even though the New York Times and many other people have copied it. It was a big deal. But I think what you've shown is that actually, by working with the data that we do have and testing the assumptions about the things that we don't yet know, you effectively use that as a way of kind of bridging the gap and filling the holes to project your best guess as to where we're going to go next. Yes?
Well, that your aim is to have a exact measures of what's going on, what's happening, finance, money, other guys, and on the other side, have this 95% of spreadsheets having errors in it. So
They're all Karens.
yeah,
I love Excel.
Do you think those issues? I mean, like you have those data and it simply doesn't match.
Absolutely, and I can tell you there have been innumerable very, very late nights poring over spreadsheets, stressed as anything, trying to problem solve. But of course, like any business, we're constantly trying to do things more efficiently, better, simpler, faster. And we work very closely with the data science team and Robin. And in fact, they're building new tools for us that don't live in Excel, particularly forecast modeling, which will be written in code, SQL, which I know absolutely nothing about, know what it does. But when the outputs come out, we can then review those in Excel. But it's not really formulas as such, it's just numbers that you can look at and sense check, intuition. So I think, yes, you can rely on tools and things and you can try and improve them, run numbers in a more robust way. But also you've got to use your gut and you've got to use the expertise within the business to sense check these things. I don't think we will ever get away from errors as such, but we will constantly work, sense check our modeling to eliminate them as best we can.
Any more questions for Darren? Great. Thanks, Darren. Thank you. Cool.
Right, hi everyone. We're tweaking things around a little bit now, but my sheet of paper will guide me as to what I need to tell you, so I hope it's all clear. So thank you for asking all the questions. We hope you're finding these sessions interesting so far, but please keep asking questions. We need the questions and feedback, and we are continuing to change and iterate based on what we hear from you. So one of the reasons we're changing what we're doing this afternoon is because of some feedback we had at lunchtime, so we can be that agile. So what we were going to do this afternoon was think about who your stakeholders are and how they might be working with you to build an analytics brief. So we're going to do something similar, but not entirely the same. The goal for this session is that when you get back to your home office, you're going to probably be starting to think more and more about personas, more and more about research, and more about insights. But there are going to be other people who haven't been with us doing this homework on these sessions over the last few months. And so you're going to have to work out how to tell them that things are a bit different. And so that's what we're going to do over the next about 45 or 50 minutes. Is we'll put an FT person on each table. They've got the same set of instructions. We're just going to work through a few points to understand who those key stakeholders are, what they're really doing, how they're making decisions. So thinking back to Tom's presentations this morning, thinking about Robin's 7 things that he squeezed down to 6 things. Think about those different groups of people think about how they're making decisions, and think about what about those decisions might change because you're introducing personas. And then the FT person will, we're not great actors, but will try to act that job title and have each table explain to us and try and persuade us of the benefits of thinking in this new way, so that you can have rehearsed and practiced those conversations before you go back to your home offices. Now, on your schedule, you'll also see that we've got coffee breaks. We're not going to have a coffee break as a group because coffee machine's too slow. So instead, each table is going to go for coffee as an individual time over the next 50 minutes, just so that we can keep maximum amount of time working. So with that, I'm going to ask the right FT people to join the right tables, and we will get started. Sorry, I've just got one extra thing. We put you back after lunch in your project teams. Sorry we didn't get that quite right yesterday afternoon, but these are the teams that we believe are going to be the ways to be working. So we've got acquisition, retention, onboarding, and onboarding. The most important thing that you need to do this afternoon with regards to this is decide which of you is going to be the leader of your team, and make sure that the FT person with you knows exactly who you are and that you've all said hello to each other, so that we can then carry on outside this face-to-face session. So, 3 things. FT person's coming with instructions, have coffee at the right time, keep asking questions, and because I'm a computer science person who can't count, make sure that you have nominated a leader and given that information to the FT person. Does that all make sense? Great, go. I'm joining you.
I don't know if the answer is probably will have a problem. Sorry?